I'm Mo. In 2022, I have been so happy to participate in TBR Tackle. This is a TBR busting game slash readathon that was invented by Kieran at Katie Books. The rules to this game are very simple. You were originally supposed to make a list of 12 books, one for every month of the year, and each month he will have a bookish friend make a prompt to follow so that we can pick from that stack which book we're going to read in that month. So in January, the prompt had to do with Hadrian's Wall and the Berlin Wall, and my pick for that was Frankenstein. I read that, and you can see that vlog listed down below. For February, the book bully did the prompt, and she kind of mixed it up and had us change around our whole TBR Tackle list, which happened to work out very well for me. At the end of the Frankenstein vlog, you can see how I changed my original TBR Tackle list and how I picked the book that I am going to be reading today. For February, the book I picked was The River Between. Like I said, if you want to see how I picked this book, go check out that vlog. Here is what I thought of The River Between. The book that I picked for February was The River Between by Ngugi Thiong'o. This is an African classic written in 1965. This book starts out in the past in Kenya, and it describes a valley with a river between and two mountain ranges. There is a tribe that is divided between these two mountain ranges, and they often have conflict, but they often also have to rely on each other. The first kind of chapter is just kind of explaining that history, and it was interesting to read because it does set you up for the kind of language and the style of storytelling that this book is going to be. The way that it is told and the way that it is written is very myth-like. This book was written in English, and Thiong'o did write a lot of books in English. He was an extremely controversial figure and author because he did also write in his native African language, and some of those books that were written in his native language were later translated to English as well, but they were also banned by the government. He had a play that was extremely controversial. The way that he's writing is very myth-like, story-like, oral history kind of vibe. So it took me a little while to get into for sure. After chapter 1, where we kind of hear the history, we start getting into the meat of our story, and we meet one of our main characters who is a young boy. We're still talking about the two mountain ranges, we're still talking about the two tribes, but now we're also talking about a division between the old ways, the Kikuyu ways, and the new Christian ways. So we're at a period of time in history where Christian missionaries have moved in, and our main character's father is descended from a long line of seers and trucayers, and he has already warned the tribe against these Christian missionaries, but no one's really listening to him. The people who have gone over to Christianity have gone over to Christianity, and the people who have not don't believe that the missionaries will pose any great threat. Our main character, Wayaki, listens to his father, Chenga, talk about all this stuff, and he already at a very, very young age, at the age of like 6 or 7, has got a hold on the kids in town. He holds sway over his little friend group, and he's known to be diplomatic and a solver of problems already. Chenga brings him to a sacred mountain and lets him know that he is descended from these seers, these truthsayers, and it's his responsibility to go to the mission missionary, learn the tricks and secrets of the white man, learn the secrets of the Christian missionaries, but return to the tribe so that he can tell them the truth about the dangers that these missionaries pose towards their way of life and towards their religion. On the other side of Chenga, we have Josiah, and he is a African man from these tribes, but he has subscribed to Christianity. He's gone to the mission. He has been indoctrinated into Christianity, and he truly believes that Christianity will help his tribe and save his tribe, so he preaches to his tribe. So on these two sides, we have these two men, both extremely powerful in their ideas, but both lacking in influence over the tribe. The tribe's people still see Chenga as kind of a crazy old man. They see Josiah as kind of this white indoctrined person, and he's pretty much an outsider because of the way he lives and that he doesn't ascribe to the tribal rituals. Chenga enlists Wayaki to go to the missionary to learn the white man's secrets, and while he's there, he never forgets his mission, but we kind of fast forward to a time when he is becoming an adult, and he is reaching a time when there is a sacred ritual in his tribe of circumcision. Both men and women get circumcised in these tribes, and it is a coming of age. It is a rite of adulthood for both sexes. We have Wayaki, who wants to participate in this, and although he's lived for many years at the missionary, hasn't forgotten his tribal history and his connections, but he does feel disconnected because he doesn't live with them. So where all the young people know the right dances and rituals for this circumcision rite, he is lagging behind and feeling a little bit isolated. And then we have Josiah's daughters who are introduced, one of which has totally come over to the Christian side, and one who struggles with her place between these two religions. She still wants to be a woman of the tribe. She still wants to get a good husband within her community, and she sees no other way of doing that than to go through the circumcision rite. And she wants to go through that ritual as well. It's something that her whole life, before her parents converted to Christianity, she saw as a rite of passage, and she was excited for. We have these two sisters. The other one kind of thinks she's crazy that she's going to go through this rite, disobey her father, disobey Christianity. As these rituals are about to take place, we see the struggle between the two sisters, the struggle between the two tribes. We see the struggle between the African tribes and the Christian converts, and we see our three main characters, current main characters, coming back together. So Wayaki and the sisters meet for the first time and start to have an understanding of each other. I'm a little bit further than that in the book. I'm on page 58. This book is only 152 pages long, but so far I'm really enjoying this book. It definitely took me, like I said, a long time to get into the writing style and the language. There's a lot of words that I don't know. The names are unfamiliar. The different tribes within the Kikuyu are unfamiliar. Although it's a very short book, it's a difficult book because it is an unusual writing style for me and a different type of book that I'm used to. But I'm really enjoying it. I think it's also really interesting because I know very little about African culture. I mean, obviously there's many different types of African culture because there's many different African tribes and African communities. There's a lot to learn there and to know there, and I know none of it. I'm definitely getting a lot of information, but one of the things that I think Americans have been preached a lot is the idea of circumcision and that rite of circumcision. Now again, the book was written in 1965, but it is a historical fiction taking place many years earlier. I guess the way that the rite of circumcision has been explained to me as a white American living in the time that I currently live is that it is barbaric, that it is unwanted by all tribe members, that it is something that's done to women to keep them submissive and teach them that they aren't allowed to have pleasure. It's something that is cruel and is forced upon them. And this obviously paints an extremely different picture of that ritual. There are two sides within the book. This is an interesting book because although it was written by an African man, and although there's obvious conflict between the traditional African heritage and Christianity, I don't know where he's going with this. I don't know if the author is trying to say that the white man is evil and that Christianity is evil, or if there's a balance there that he is intending to show. Because at the point where I am now, something tragic has happened, and Wayaki and the sisters have had to go to the mission to get help from the mission. It's clear that the African tribes aren't able to tackle everything like sickness and infection, so they do turn to the white man who has more resources than they do, but I can't tell if that's going to backfire on them. I can't tell if that's still a cautionary tale of trusting different methods than you're used to. It's really interesting. I'm super interested to see where it goes. Please let me know if you are participating in TBR Tackle. Let me know what your February book was. And don't forget that my whole book list, which has changed since the beginning, is in the description below. Let me know if you've read any African writers or if you've read this African writer, and let me know what your thoughts are. I would love to hear them. I have finished The River Between, and I really enjoyed this book. I think there was a lot of interesting things in it. It definitely wasn't the most easy thing for me to read, and I think that that was partly because it is not written by a white person, and it is not written by an American person, and it is not written by a British person. I think that the storytelling style in this is much closer to a Bible story or a religious story, much closer to a fable, and I think that the normal beats that an American Western fiction novel might have in storytelling and in character development were different than in this novel. You know, this didn't have those same aspects that an Americanized slash westernized novel might have. So it was not easy to read. It wasn't hard to read. That was not a detriment to my reading, I don't think, but I do think that certain aspects of that just meant that maybe I wasn't quite as engaged with the story. And I think that particularly has to do with the ending. I really enjoyed how we saw Wayaki through his whole life and how his passion and compassion really made him want to unite the tribes and the villages, and made him want to have a balance between the white man's education, the white man's knowledge, and the traditions and ceremonies of the tribe. He was never going to give up his being part of the tribe, and I think that was a big part of the story, was the idea that although you know new things, although that you are different from being with a new group of people, that doesn't mean that you have to give up your faith in your traditional practices. We have a character who, although her parents have converted to Christianity, and although she believes in Jesus, she still wants to be seen as a woman in the tribe. She still wants to go through with the tribal ceremonies, and she understands that she can do both, and she can be both. And Wayaki is the same. He understands that just by having the education from the white man doesn't mean that he doesn't love, associate, and affiliate with the tribe and their traditional religions. And then obviously the forces at work disagree with that. The converted Africans believe that all the traditional ceremonies should be banished, that these are evil, and that it means that Satan and the devil have taken over. And the white people just think that Africans are heathens and savages, and their tribal rituals obviously go against God. There's these two villages that are in contrast and in conflict. There is the villages and the white man who are in conflict. There is the converted Africans and the super traditional Kayemi, which are the tribal leaders who are in conflict. And all this time, Wayaki is really trying to unite these groups and show them that there is a balance and that they all can come together. And the most important thing is the education of the young and the education of everyone so that they can be on an equal footing when that time of conflict spurs a worse conflict. It was also interesting to see how it's clear that the circumcision rituals are villainized by the white man and by the Christians, and how they are not villainized by the Africans, the traditions of course, except that when the Kayemi, the tribal leaders, are faced with the idea that more people might convert, they do talk about forcibly circumcising the non-believers. They do talk about the idea that they might force them to do this tribal ceremony, and not just circumcision, but other ones as well. So there is like a really interesting commentary and dynamic on how you can take those things too far, and you can make something that should be sacred and pure into something evil and bad. But the whole thing is done in such a way, and the whole book is written in such a way, that neither side is really ever villainized. Neither side is ever shown to be the wrong side. I think that Thiong'o really did make a very diplomatic book, and I'm not sure if that's just my take on it or if that's what he was trying to do, especially as someone who probably in his own life had to bridge that gap, be part of both those worlds, and live with one foot on either side of the river between. This book held me super captivated until about the last quarter of the book, and then it got quite a bit repetitive, and there was a lot of misunderstandings, there was a lot of miscommunications, there was a lot of missed opportunities that happened, and it kind of started to drag on for me at that point, which made it a little bit difficult to read towards the end of the book. I do also think that the ending was a little bit ambiguous. I don't want to give anything away, but it wasn't fully settled in my mind what happened at the end and what was going to happen past the end of this book. And that kind of made the whole thing, I don't know, a little dissatisfying for me, but also a little like, like, why did I read all this? Like, there was no solution, there was no resolution, there was no final moral to this story. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the idea of bridging these two communities and being in the middle and not villainizing either, maybe that means that in the end you don't get a resolution. You don't get a final side to pick or person to root for. I'm really interested to read more of Thiong'o's work. I think because it is written in a non-Western lens, I would like to know what his other books are like. Maybe I would find them easier to read, not because they're more westernized, but because now I'm more used to reading his voice and his writing. It definitely made me also want to learn more about the Kikuyu tribe and about Kenya and about Nairobi. I'm like a little bit obsessed with the idea of one day traveling to Nairobi and Kenya now, after reading this and after reading Out of Africa by Isak Dinesen. It seems like a very interesting place, and based on a book written in the 30s, which was Out of Africa, and then a book written in the 60s, which is The River Between, what is that place like almost 60 years later? What is that place like now in the modern world? Do the tribal traditions and various factions of people still clash? Have they come together? Do the Kikuyu and other African tribes still hold on to their religion, their sentiments, and their beliefs? I would be so interested to find out. I definitely want to do a little bit more research and hopefully one day take a trip there and find out with my own eyes. This was the February book for TBR Tackle, and it is only February 22nd, so I have quite a few days left to wait and find out what our next prompt is. But when Katie posts that video, I will come back and we'll find out what my March TBR Tackle book will be. We are back, and now we get to watch Katie's latest video. I saw that it came out today, March 1st. So I'm gonna go ahead and watch Katie's video and see what our next prompt is. I have my remaining 10 books for TBR Tackle right here, and we'll decide together what I'm going to pick for my March read. Okay, here we go.
Good evening, Campbell. It's the 1st of March, which means it's the next prompt of the TBR Tackle.
So the friend that Kieran has doing this prompt for this month is Milena from Milena Reads, and I love her channel. I think she's a great, fun booktuber. She does a lot of really interesting videos. She reads a lot of classics, so if you haven't checked her out, definitely make sure to visit her channel, as well as joining in with TBR Tackle.
Grab your stack, grab a pen, and a piece of paper, and write every title you still have on your stack on a piece of paper.
This is a prompt that requires some work on my part. Let's watch the rest of the prompt first. Let me go get a piece of paper. This is why a messy house is great, because I just happen to have paper and a pen on the floor. So I wrote down the 10 books that I have left on my TBR Tackle, and now I am going to rip them up so that we can fold them up so that we can pick one. Milena said to create essentially a TBR jar. Put all your options in a jar or a hat or whatever, and pick out one book. I don't have a jar, but I do have this plate, which is a very special commemorative plate, and I will mix my 10 options up, and I will pick one option. Let me make sure they're not sticking together. So my option that I picked is Long Division by Kiese Laymon. Milena's prompt states that you have to put this one back on the shelf and pick a new book from your shelf instead of this book that you just picked. But unfortunately, I really want to read this book, and I really want to read it for TBR Tackle. So I'm going to take this one out of my stack. So my stack will now be a stack of 9. Of course, KD says that you can mess around with these prompts and you can choose to do them in whatever manner that you see fit. So I am going to take Long Division out of my stack. I'm going to put it to the side. But instead of picking a new book off of my shelf, and instead of taking Long Division out of my TBR Tackle list altogether, I'm going to pick another prompt, and that is going to be the book that I'm going to read for this TBR Tackle. The book that I picked as the actual book that I'm going to read for TBR Tackle in March is The Third Life of Grange Copeland by Alice Walker. Alice Walker is most known for The Color Purple. I've never read any Alice Walker. I've never seen the movie The Color Purple. I've never read the book The Color Purple, and I was really excited to find this book. I really like the cover, and this is the book that I'm going to be reading in March for TBR Tackle. Thanks so much to Milena Reads. Thanks so much to Karen at Katie Books. Let me know in the comments below what book you read in February and what book you're going to be reading in March. If you haven't joined TBR Tackle yet, make sure you try it. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!